Good morning. Well, good afternoon. I guess we're 1 minute into the afternoon today. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Webb. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid, and I am one of your presenters for today's webinar, Affordability in Private Education. And we have another presenter as well, Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I am the Enrollment Data and Services Coordinator at Flint Hill, and I'll be monitoring the chat today. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to throw it in there, and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks so much, and we are glad you're here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Laura. And so today with in this webinar, it is our goal to share with you some of the common ways that we know about to afford private education. We'll also talk a little bit about the value of a private education, or when you're talking about affordability, a lot of people look at that as the return on the investment. And then we'll also talk some about next steps with Flint Hill specifically. So before I jump into all of that, I'll just share that one of the first steps before you dive into thinking about private school tuition is to consider your budget. And also, as we review the resources today, a lot of people, it's not just one, right? It's a combination of several of the things that we'll discuss today that people put together in order to afford private education. So I hope you'll think about them as a combination instead of choosing one, if you will. Something else as you're going through your school search and you're determining how you'll afford private school education. Of course, one of the key steps is to gathering information on how much private school costs. And so asking the schools that you're looking at questions about tuition, but also what is included in tuition. What are some fees outside of tuition? For example, at Flint Hill, our tuition includes one-on-one technology. It includes field experiences. And for middle school and upper school, it includes lunch as well. Additional costs are books, uniforms, if you don't use our uniform exchange, and transportation. So that's just to give you an idea. After our meeting today, we will also share with you a guide to your school search. It'll be linked in a follow-up email. And within that guide, there is actually a tool that you can click on that we developed for families in your situation to compare, to kind of list all the different costs at each of the schools you might be considering and to compare. So hope you'll get some use out of that comparison tool as well. And to get us started with one of the things to consider when you're looking at affording a private school, Laura will share with us payment plans.
Thanks, Jennifer. So the first and easiest option is to get on a payment plan. Paying the entire year's tuition in one go may be a lot to handle, considering your budget. So one thing that you can do to help is to budget one of the things that may make it help is to request a payment plan. So many private schools offer different payment plans. Most will offer a one pay, which is full tuition in one lump sum. A two pay, which is two different payments. Typically, it's one over the summer and then one again in the winter time, or a 10 pay, which is a monthly on the school calendar. And so if a payment plan is something that's important to your family, make sure you ask what options are available for each individual school during your admission process. At Flint Hill, we offer all of those payment plans to help families with their unique needs. And for us, there are not any fees associated with a payment plan here at Flint Hill. So some schools will have an extra fee if you do the 10-month payment plan. So that's something you can check. And then the only fee that we would tack on, if you will, is if you use a credit card. So there's a credit or debit usage fee of 2.85% that's applied to all debit and credit card transactions. So another thing to consider while thinking about payment plans is to ask about tuition insurance options to help you cover costs if your student needs to unenroll at some point during the year.
Great, thank you. And another option to consider is applying for financial aid. Many private schools offer financial aid. What financial aid does is it estimates how much a family could reasonably contribute towards that institution's tuition. So the people reviewing, there's often a financial aid committee. Those reviewing the financial aid applications, they'll analyze income, expenses, assets, debts, the age of the parents, the family size, all dependents, children in the house, children at college, other family members that might be living in the house, and then education cost for all family members as well. And so one of the common questions that we get is, what is the cutoff? And because it is, a little bit more complex than that, because the cutoff per se for a family of three, two parents with one child, is going to be a lot different than what the income would need to be, the income cutoff for a family with, say, four kids and three parents, grandparents living in the house with them. And maybe they have medical expenses. And so there isn't a cutoff, and that's because it really depends on how all of these factors interact with each other. And so the thing that we're really looking at is how, back to that, how much could a family reasonably contribute towards financial aid? So we're really looking at the gap between what their income is, what their reasonable expenses are, and what the tuition is. And so the bottom line, if you're trying to decide whether or not to apply for financial aid, regardless of your income, if you feel that you could not reasonably afford tuition, then it's worth it probably to submit an application. And with that said, it's also important to know that just because a school offers need-based aid, that does not mean that everybody who demonstrates financial need will be awarded aid. In reality, most schools receive a lot more financial aid applications than demonstrated need, than aid that they can award. And that's also the case at Flint Hill. So when a family is offered admission but cannot meet, but we're not able to meet their financial needs, we're not able to provide them with an award to close that gap, then we'll place them in what is called an aid wait pool. And so an aid wait pool is when we've awarded all of our financial aid budget, but a family has demonstrated need and we weren't able to award, so that if funds later become available, we could reallocate those funds and use them for someone in the financial aid wait pool. In terms of when to apply, so for Flint Hill, we use what's called the FAST system. It's the Financial Aid for School Tuition system. It is linked on our tuition and financial aid website. We'll also link that in the follow-up email as well. It actually opened on November 1st, and so you can go there to apply for financial aid for Flint Hill. For other schools, they might have other systems. There's a few financial aid systems out there. So you'll just want to talk with the schools and look at their financial aid and tuition websites to make sure you're using the application system that they use. So in terms of types of financial aid, need-based, which I've already discussed, is the most common type of financial aid, and that's awarded annually to students who demonstrate that need. And students and families typically must reapply every year. But I know at Flint Hill that once you're awarded aid, unless something really changes in your family circumstances, like a pretty significant change to the financial picture, then we'll typically keep awarding families every year when they reapply every year, as long as their application looks similar. And so a financial aid isn't a loan. It doesn't need to be paid back. And as I mentioned at Flint Hill, we just have the need-based aid. Some schools have merit scholarships as well. I think it's a little bit less common, and they're usually reserved for students who have a special talent that the school might be seeking. Sometimes it's art or music or academics or athletics. And there's typically certain criteria to apply to a merit aid or merit scholarship. And so you would just want to check with the different schools you're considering to see if that's an option. There is a great resource, and we're gonna share actually a Google document with several of the resources that we'll be talking about today. So feel free to take notes, but also know that you'll be receiving a lot of these links that we discussed today in that email that I referenced. One of the great resources is NAIS, the National Association for Independent Schools, has a myths about financial aid. And one of the myths that I like to dispel, because I think it's a bit of a misconception a lot of times, or a question for a lot of families, is that if a family applies for financial aid, it will hurt the child's chances of being admitted. And as the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid at Flint Hill here, I can assure you that that is not the case at Flint Hill. And so we have an admission committee that makes decisions about admission. They do not know anything about whether the family applied for financial aid. They are not privy to any of that information. They are just looking at the admissibility of the candidate and whether we think that Flint Hill is the place where that child is going to thrive. After families make it through the admission committee, then those who have applied for financial aid will then go through the financial aid committee, where those decisions are independent. And as I mentioned, it could be, ideally, you would receive an admission decision, which is admission, and then a financial aid and award. But sometimes we're able to offer admission, but we're not able, we run out of the budget for the award, which is what results in the aid weight pool. So when to apply for financial aid, we are a member of the Association of Independent Schools in Greater Washington, and we follow their date and timeline guidelines for a lot of our process. And so every school has its own financial aid schedule, so you'll just want to make sure that you're keeping track. Ours is January 20th. And so our admission, our application deadline, and our financial aid deadline are both on January 20th. And so those are two different systems, two different applications that you'll complete, one for financial aid, one for admission. And something else that I'll say about the financial aid process is, as you can imagine, all the factors I mentioned, the debt, expenses, assets, costs, all of that, the application digs into a lot of that. And so you'll find yourself looking up and digging for things that you don't have handy, or at least a lot of people do. And so you'll want to give yourself plenty of time and not start the application on January 19th, and knowing that it might take you some days and some legwork to collect some documents and look up the Kelley Blue Book value of your car and things like that. And so we do recommend starting that application, as soon as possible, really, to make sure that you're able to get that in time. By the January 20th deadline. And then you'll receive a financial aid decision from Flint Hill at the same time that you receive your admission decision. And that is March 3rd for this year, or for next year, really, 2023. And so you'll receive those together. So there's, a variety of combinations, knowing that the financial aid decision is one and the admission decision is another, but it'll all be in the same package there. And I'll just make a comment about the admission process, and also the aid process. I know a lot of people kind of wonder about, start to wonder, am I going to be admitted? What is it? And have a little bit of anxiety in the process. And so I just want to share, while we're talking about this, that just know that your child will be admitted to the best fit school for them. If it is the very best fit school, then they're going to be admitted because it's the best fit school for them. And so just rest assured and take some pressure off of yourself as you're going through the process, just knowing that is how it's going to work out.
Okay, so in addition to the payment plans, there are other options that you can take when paying for tuition. So one is taking out a loan. Just like you can take out a loan for a new house or a new car, you can take out a loan for private school tuition. You can look at your finances and determine whether you're willing to take out long-term debt If you think you might be able to pay it off before the loan ends, just make sure there's no penalties involved in paying it off early. So many lenders do have that, so you do want to check with them if that's the case. Tuition loans are personal loans provided by a private lender. You must apply directly to the lender, and your loan amount and interest rate are going to depend on the lender's credit requirements and the current market value and all the things. Some people use loans to pay for expenses not covered by a grant or a tuition or a financial aid award, for example, uniforms or laptops or whatever other accessories you'd need. So that's another thing to think about. You can search for lenders. Again, we're going to include all of this in the email, so don't feel pressured to write all this down, who offer K-12 loans on the NAIS. Jennifer mentioned them earlier, company or consultant directory. So they do have a list of vendors that they've used before and recommend. And then be sure to do your research. There's just like when you're researching your mortgage, there's plenty of options out there for private school tuition loans. So you want to make sure to check on that. Regarding Flint Hill specifically, we partner with an educational loan program called Your Tuition Solution. And since 2004, this company's been around, and they've used over 2,400 private schools across the US. So they're a pretty substantial company and are familiar with private school loans. So you'd be in good hands with them. And then another option to pay for tuition is by credit card. And many private schools will allow you to do this. If you can make your tuition payments in full, then a credit card would be a great way to earn some cash back or rewards or airline points, all of the things. You kind of have to just play your system to which best benefits your family. But not paying off the balance right away and then getting charged interest kind of defeats the purpose of those rewards. So really look at your credit card and your personal finances to see if that's the right decision for your family. You also want to ask, if you're planning on paying with credit card, about extra credit card fees by the school or institution. So for us, there's, again, that 2.85% fee for using a credit card. It's pretty common among the independent schools. So, but it is there. So you just want to factor that into your decision.
Thank you. So next we'll talk about scholarships. So private and public scholarships. So these are programs that are typically, we mentioned the ones that schools might offer, and now we'll talk a little bit about some other organizations that might offer scholarships. And so a lot of families think about scholarships as financial tools only for college students, but there are a variety of scholarships available to help fund kindergarten through 12th grade education. So for families sending their kids to independent schools, there's, again, the National Association of Independent Schools are such a great resource. They also have a financial aid guide that will help on this front. Also on AISGW's website, AISGW.org/affordability, that we'll share the link to. They also list, because these organizations are often changing, their requirements are changing, they're offering more, they're offering less, new ones start offering. And so we refer you to those resources just to get the latest on what is being offered now. There is also the Grants to Individuals Foundation, which offers grants to students. In addition to offering grants to students in university or graduate programs, they also offer grants to students who are pursuing private education in a secondary education institution. And there are a number of organizations that also offer need-based scholarships. So, just similar to financial aid, these scholarships at other organizations are often either need-based or merit-based. And so some of the ones that we've heard of and come across and know that families have used is the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation for Young Scholars program. They award tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships to students entering high school who have demonstrated strong academic ability and family needs. So it's that combination. And for families, last I checked, it was no more than $95,000 for the income. And so that application process starts in 7th grade for the higher grades, of course. Another program is Emerging Scholars Program. It's a comprehensive 14-month program of academic, cultural, and social preparation. Emerging Scholars partners with parents and institutions to provide financial, academic, and social support, and institutions, which allows unique, capable, and driven students to really embrace life-changing opportunities such as access to independent school education. And so it really invests in its scholars. And so their website, emergingsscholarsprogram.org, will be shared as well. If you want to cast the net a bit wider, you'll find that there are a number of middle school and high school scholarships and awards that take a variety of criteria into consideration. There's the Gloria Barron Prize for Young Heroes Award that awards up to $10,000 to students between 8 and 18. So that starts a little bit younger than the other ones that I've mentioned. And that's a service-based one. So it's through dedication to community service that is awarded. There's some that are for very specific things, very specific talents and interests. For example, there's the Team America Rocketry Challenge Award that awards a total of $100,000 in total to middle and high school students who demonstrate excellence through a model rocket contest. And so there's a lot of organizations that support a variety of awards, scholarships. And so I mentioned some resources to search these on. Of course, there's Google too, private education scholarships, private education award programs will turn up quite a bit of things as well. Something else in terms of more public assistance programs is there are estate voucher and really interesting tax credit programs in a lot of different states in the district. So a few states, including DC, the district, and Maryland, offer government provided aid that allows parents to use public funds to pay for private school tuition. So the assistance ranges from tax credits, which reimburse you for some expenses, to vouchers that can cover up to half of a private school's tuition. In Virginia, there is the Education Improvement Scholarship Tax Credit. And this is a program that offers 65% tax credit to individuals and businesses that donate to a qualified scholarship foundation. The Scholarship Foundation then provides private school scholarships to students whose families meet the income requirements. So I'd recommend that you visit their website if you live in Virginia and going to attend school in Virginia to find more information about the tax credit scholarship program in terms of their funding, eligibility, and regulations. You can also visit the your State Department of Education website to learn which resources have been allocated to your state specifically if you're not in Virginia. I'll just also keep in mind that to qualify for Education Improvement Scholarship Tax Credit, the student must have attended public school in the preceding school unless they are entering at those earlier grades of kindergarten and first grade. A couple other resources are there's the American Federation for Children. Their website provides information about tax credits and voucher programs that can assist children in private school. There's another website, EdChoice, also has listings of educational savings accounts, school vouchers, tax credit scholarships, individual tax credits, and deductions by state. And through that site, you can also check your state's Department of Education website as well. So a lot of resources. Flint Hill isn't official partners with a lot of the ones that I mentioned. So we're really just sharing information that we've gathered and learned about in our experience, but encourage you, of course, to check with each individual resource for the most up-to-date information for them. Another way, another way to afford private education, as I mentioned before, it's really, I think of affordability and private education as a pie, and trying to just gather different pieces to cover the full tuition. So it might be external scholarships, it might be institutional financial aid. You might consider taking out a loan for a small gap, particularly if you know that you'll have the ability to pay it back soon. So another way to kind of piece all of this together might be family support or community support. So if you're really involved as a family and different organizations that like to support education, if you have family members, grandparents, and uncles that are looking to contribute, we've heard all sorts of stories where sometimes grandparents have put money into buying books or doing other things to break away some of that piece away from the parents for having the full responsibility. And so recommend that families think about what other resources might be available to them. A lot of times, we've also heard like families that will have family members for birthdays or holidays where kids, already get so much. Their family members will put it into an education fund for their children. And so there's a variety of ways to piece this together. Some of the costs, like club fees, textbooks, uniforms, transportation costs, are a bit smaller than tuition. So a lot of times families can help find some other people that might cover that. Another thing that we'll recommend as you're looking at how to piece together tuition and associated fees for attending private school is to look for ways to save money. And so some families will hire experts like financial advisors that will help with this. I know other families, as soon as they start thinking about affording private education, they'll start listening to podcasts or attending webinars, particularly about financial advice. Look for ways to cut down on costs. Some of those common extra expenses that some of us face, and eating out or gas costs because we're driving so much, or subscriptions. And so I know a lot of people can do this regularly already, but more money that we can save in other places, of course, is a way that we can have more to contribute to private education. So these slides keep moving so fast on me. Sorry about that. Let me go back. Okay, there we go. Another way to cover tuition is to think about education savings. And so a lot of families, especially, some families are joining us. I know of really little ones, or maybe even kids that are a couple years away from school age. And so education savings fund is a common way that families save for education. A lot of times it's commonly associated with college or university programs, but a lot of these accounts can also be used for private education as well. So education savings funds are a type of investment account that receives key tax advantages. So many parents will set up one for their kids early in life and look forward to using the funds to defray college costs. But you can also use those funds for private education costs. So there's the Coverdell Education Savings Account, or 529s, that can be used for pre-college private school tuition and other expenses. And there's a lot of tax benefits that those programs can offer families. And so all the money invested and deposited into these types of accounts are grows tax deferred, meaning that funds in the account can be withdrawn with no tax penalty to pay for any qualified education expenses. So private school tuition, books, uniforms, the other associated expenses. So if that's something that you might be interested in, there's a really great resource that compares the Coverdell ESA with the 529 plan. So you can think about which one might be better for your family. And we're a college prep school, so at Flint Hill, and so of course preparing for and saving for college is incredibly important. And so we, of course, recommend doing that, but also think about how those same accounts might help you pay for private education. Some families that might believe that a private school education for them might help open doors to other types of scholarship opportunities that are specific to their family in higher education. And so we'd leave that up to the family to start their research to see what support might be available to them when they get to college, either scholarships or other aid programs, and making that determination about where to invest those education dollars. So next we'll talk about the value of a private school education. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the how to afford it and about discovering and figuring out the cost. As I mentioned, a lot of families use a lot of these. They piece them together. Some families do it. There's a couple different ways. A lot of families will first sit down and determine what sacrifices they might be able to make to afford private education. Some families will first gather all of the resources they can to figure out what their budget is and then what the gap is, and try to figure out how to pay that. Other families will approach it by instead of first thinking about all of the resources they can cobble together, they think about what they can pay themselves right now by, often making sacrifices, and then seeing what the gap is, and then looking for resources particularly to fill that gap. So of course, there's a couple different ways to approach it, and I know that you'll do whatever works for you. We do see private education as an investment, right? There is a return on the investment into private education. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. There's education and career outcomes. There's a lot of different studies out there. What is the National Education Longitudinal Study that indicates that students who attend a private school are twice as likely to have earned a bachelor's degree by the time that they're in their mid-20s. There is also the Council for American Private Education that states that 64% of graduates from private high schools go on to a four-year college. That is actually 100% at Flint Hill. 100% of our students attend a college. Also looking at income and potential for income. So there's the private education, and then also the increased likelihood of getting a bachelor's and then also a graduate degree. And those with a professional degree often make $56,000 or more annually. So there's of course some monetary gain in the future for attending private education and the doors that opens for college and graduate school. I think there was one study that said over the lifetime, it compared people that attended private education and said that over a lifetime, they make about $2 million more than those that don't. So of course, there's career outcomes, but at Flint Hill, it's private education and the education journey altogether. It's about so much more. It's really about life satisfaction. It's about leading a fulfilling life. It's about getting excited about their careers and their education and what they pursue. And so private schools tend to be more child directed. So students are able to engage in their interest and pursue their curiosities, which help them discover their true gifts and talent. And so it's really crucial for choosing the right education and then later career path, which results in better life satisfaction for the child, both during school and then as they grow into adulthood, because they've really been able to define their talents and skills and build their own path, which at Flint Hill we call blazing the trail. So when children are able to choose, make choices according to the interest, they just end up being more satisfied in life and their journey through life. And for a lot of parents, and certainly at Flint Hill, that's more than you can really put a price tag on, if you will. Another value of private education is private school teachers. It's the teachers, the classroom, the approach to learning. Private school teachers have flexibility in how they teach and what they teach. In the absence of mandatory testing, they're allowed to focus more on mastery of real world application. Students are encouraged to challenge themselves, and they're supported in reaching their fullest potential. This leads to a profound understanding of the subjects that they're dealing with. On average, private school classes are a lot smaller. And so that might not just be better for your child, but that's also better for the teachers and what they're able to do and how they're able to teach. And so a lot of teachers will enjoy the autonomy and can pay attention to challenging and developing each individual learner. There's private schools that tend to have some more flexibility. Private funding ensures flexibility in terms of critical programs. And so private schools can really be nimble in determining the programs that are best for them and keeping the programs that are working. They can also be nimble in making best decisions for their community in unexpected circumstances, like the recent pandemic, where a lot of the private schools were able to flip to virtual learning and really keep that continuity of learning, like Flint Hill did. There is also, in terms of thinking about your investment, character, values, private schools are known for their character development. Private education is often founded on a strong sense of values, and those values help children to form lifelong friendships with their students, with other students in the classroom. It also fosters healthy relationships between parents, teachers, students, as there's a general feeling of community in a values and character-aligned community. And then community, which requires a values-aligned community, will often require a strong partnership. And so really great things happen when both the students and the parents are all equally committed to the success of all the students. And then of course the community is also another support system, both for the parents and for the kids. I know at Flint Hill, a lot of parents will share that when they drop their kids off, they really they feel joy in knowing that their kids have found their people, and the parents themselves have also found their people and found their friends there. And so that's a really beautiful thing. And so when you're looking into different schools, we did a whole webinar on navigating the private school education process, where we go a lot more in depth, and that recording is available on our events website. So we give a lot more tips about navigating the private school search and finding the best website, the best school for you. And but a little bit, it's just really learning about the ethos of a school. At Flint Hill, we're the place. We imagine what's impossible. We never rest on our laurels. We're endlessly curious, which that leads to openness, making connections, expanding horizons. We are driven to evolve constantly, always anticipating our ever-changing world and leading the way towards innovative solutions that shape tomorrow and the future. We champion positive change and seek creative solutions, striving to deliver excellence in all we do and to better the world around us. And so learning about a school's ethos and their approach and their vision and their mission and their values can really help you determine if that's something that aligns with your family. And so We another fun question that I recommend asking schools when you're looking at schools is, if your school was a person, what would their personality be? And if Flint Hill was a person, I would describe them as innovative, curious, courageous, supportive, inclusive, and intentional. So that can give you an idea of, like, is that the kind of person you'd want to spend every day with? Is that the kind of institution that you'd want to send your child to? So I'll turn it over to Laura, who's going to tell you more about our core values.
Thanks, Jennifer. So like we said, the theme of this webinar today is, how best to afford your school and private school admission. And private school is an investment, right? Jennifer talked about that investment earlier. And so you want to make sure that when you are making this big investment, that you're doing it for what are the right reasons and the best reasons for your family. So you want to make sure that you're asking each school that you're looking at about their values and their mission, like Jennifer talked about. So you can see our core values are there up on the slide. Respect and value all equally, lead and support with compassion, act with integrity, imagine what's possible, and blaze the trail. And they're really steeped in our culture. They're taught at the earliest grades and reinforced all throughout the learning journey. So starting in JK and all the way through 12th grade. And these values are the measure of all that we do, and they inspire us to be our best self each and every day. So taking a look at those kinds of things and making sure that that's what you're looking for to get out of your child's private school experience.
Okay, so a big question that comes up for us that families will ask is, should I do it now or later? And so when it comes down to that decision, of course, like everything else, we recommend that you choose what makes sense for your family. So some families wait till later because they believe the investment is best close to college years and college preparation. A lot of other families believe that earlier is better, because if you start a private education earlier, you'll start to get so many of those benefits and returns on the investment that we just discussed. It starts your child out, if you have a little one or a younger one, with a firm foundation and values. It fosters self-directed learners. It connects them from a young age with a really close-knit community and support system. There is the foundation of safety and security that allows them to take meaningful risk. That's a part of our vision for every student at Flint Hill, and be themselves, another part of our vision. And so they're able to start doing that at a young age, and it just becomes part of who they are and how they explore and how they learn. And then, of course, that really early impact from an inspiration from bold, creative teachers with advanced degrees. At Flint Hill are, I think it was about 75, maybe even 77% of our faculty have advanced degrees in education. So really some of the best educators I've ever seen. And well, it may be overwhelming to consider private school, especially when you're on a budget, like a lot of us are. If you're really committed to the idea and you're willing to do the research and you're really willing to navigate the resources, there are some opportunities out there to kind of take down that overwhelm and provide more support. And if you keep in mind what's really important to you and check all of your options, then private school might be, something that is worth your time and investment and is achievable to you. So we really recommend that you just stay in constant connection with what is most important to you as a family and for your child, and look at all of your options. And something that we do at Flint Hill and say a lot is, as Laura just mentioned, it's one of our core values, is imagining what's possible. So we really encourage that type of thought.
So I can jump in here a little bit to talk about the application process. So the first step, if you would like to apply, or if you have already, is to fill out the application and pay the application fee. Once that application is received by our office and processed, you'll kind of see a checklist of to-do items in your online portal. We call it Husky Hub. So depending on the grade you're applying for, you'll see different requirements, including teacher recommendations, transcripts. We do a parent interview. Depending on the age of the child, we do a child interview as well. So all of those files and all of that paperwork and kind of to-do items need to be completed by the 20th, I believe.
Laura, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I take full responsibility here. I missed updating this slide. So the slide will say the January 21st, 2022, which was last year, deadline. And so it's actually January 20th, 2023. I apologize for that.
No problem. Keeping me on my toes. I like it.
I know.
So Friday, January 20th is the deadline for all of those things to be complete, and it's also the application deadline for the separate financial aid application that we referred to earlier. Once all of those things are kind of put together, we take the next few weeks to review all the files, review our re-enrollment contracts, kind of see what spaces we have available, and then new decisions are issued the first Friday in March. I believe this year it is the 4th. And so if you have any questions about the admission process, please don't hesitate to reach out. You should have an admission officer who's your designated kind of guide throughout this process. You can always contact them via phone or email. We have virtual options for some of our processes for our interviews and things like that. And then also the admission@flinthill.org email is a great resource to get in touch with us. We're all kind of standing by that big email. So at any time. So if you have any immediate questions, that's the best place to reach out.
And so other next steps, you're at an event now. Thank you so much. We're so glad that you're here and you spend this time with us. We have a lot of other virtual events. We have previous events that have happened that we've recorded. They're on our website. We have a lot of upcoming events. Some are divisional information sessions. Some are on topics like math or innovation or art or curiosity, which I mentioned is really big at Flint Hill. So check out our events website. It is also our Visit Campus page where you'll also be able to register for tours to come onto campus and see our facilities. You can schedule phone consultations, virtual meetings with your officer. Follow us on social media. We're active there. You can really see inside of our classrooms. We also have a great blog that's very informative and are for people in your shoes. And we write the whole blog off of questions that people going through this process ask. And so encourage you to read on that. You can filter through topics. And so those are some of the next steps. We're also glad to answer questions here today. And so this would be a great time that if you've thought of any questions as you've been listening here, to send it through in the chat and we will be sure to answer your questions. Another thing that I'll mention while we're seeing if any questions come in is we just released our virtual tours. So this is hot off the press, added to our website, I think yesterday afternoon. We just completed virtual tours so that families, similar to what you're doing right now, from the comfort of your home or office, you can take a quick 5-6 minute tour of Flint Hill. You'll hear from other leaders and other team members at the institution. Admission officer is likely the person. I see that there's a question about if the admission person and Laura popped in. Yes. Yep. That's likely your person. And we're all here to help. So don't, feel free to send an email as Laura mentioned to that admission@flinthill.org. Email Laura, email me if you're not sure who your officer is, or email the person you've heard from and ask, and we'll always get you in the right direction. If I already applied but having issues with the app, who should I contact? So it depends on which app. So If it is, oh, Laura was working on your case this morning, so it looks like you've been in contact with the right person already. For others here, you can always contact Laura. You might have received or seen emails from Sarah Burnett. She's another one of our great systems people that's there to help. If it's an admission application option, and you're locked out, you can email our help desk at helpdesk@Flint Hill. If there's some other concerns you have about the application, email Laura, Sarah. If it's fast application, also feel free to email Laura, Sarah, and we can help problem solve. Fast also, if it's like real, if it seems to be like a significant technical glitch or a password issue, then Fast has an email address and a help number. But for the person that asked the question, sounds like you're in great hands with Laura. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We set out to answer your questions related to affordability and private education. And thank you for helping us make this webinar a success. You'll get that follow-up email from us shortly. It'll have this recording. It'll have the links that I mentioned earlier. And we look forward to seeing you at other events and continuing the dialogue on this really exciting journey to private education. So thank you for your time today.